My name is Dave Medeiros. I am the president of the Chesapeake Region Safety Council. We are a regional independent chapter of the National Safety Council, and our mission is to educate and influence people to prevent accidental injury and death. Really simply put, what we do is work with people to try to prevent injuries and unintentional deaths. Saving lives and preventing injuries is what we do. Can you all, I'm a little bit loud. Hey, will you all say the word safety for me real quick? Come on, say it like you mean it. There you go. Look at that. Even the grumpiest face out there smiled when you said that word this morning. That's pretty awesome. But what I want to talk to you about real quickly is to just say, when you're a young driver, it's really exciting. You get a sense of freedom by being able to get in a vehicle and drive down the road. You're in control. You can go where you want to go. You can do what you want to do. And it's very exciting. It's fun. Even as a cranky old man like I am right now, I still enjoy driving down the road unless I'm in a traffic jam. Something I want to share with you though, and this is all about that, is trying to give you all a visual to think about what's going on when you're driving down the road. What we don't want to do is present you with a bunch of gloom and doom, but what we want you to do is understand when you walk away from here, when you're driving down the road, your choices you make when you're behind the wheel of that car, they have consequences. And they could be really good consequences. You could get to where you want to go, be on time, have a great time at a party or with your friends or whatever, but they can also have negative consequences. And what we want you all to do is take a look at this dramatic mock crash, watch what happens, absorb it, think about it. As you're going down the road later on in life and you make a choice of how you're driving that vehicle, just think, there could be a really good consequence. You get there on time, you get there safe, everybody's happy and you have a great time. But there's also times when there's negative consequences that result. And those negative consequences have a huge impact, not just on you, but your family, your friends, actually your whole community that you're involved in. So without further ado, I want to introduce Chrissy Nizer from the Motor Vehicle Administration. Chrissy.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you today. Chrissy Nizer, Motor Vehicle Administrator and Governor Hogan's Highway Safety Representative. There's nothing more exciting to me than being in one of our branch offices and seeing somebody getting that learner's permit or new driver's license. Normally there's a selfie involved in it. And while that's appropriate, certainly at our branch offices, certainly not appropriate when you're behind the wheel. We know that distracted driving contributes to a third of roadway fatalities in Maryland. And our goal is to make sure that our young drivers, our new drivers, are able to get safely to their destination, as Dave talked about. April is Distracted Driving Awareness Month and also Work Zone Safety. Demonstration today is not meant to scare you, but to show you the reality of what can happen in a crash and what happens when you take your focus off driving even for a few seconds. Driving really requires our full time and attention. We don't think about it that way because we do it every day or we see somebody else do it every day. But the reality is you have to fully pay attention to what you're doing. We talk about taking your eyes off the road to text. The average amount of time it takes is 5 seconds. 5 seconds might not seem long, but at 55 miles an hour, that would take you the entire length of a football field. Would you want to be blindfolded going down a football field driving? I don't think any of us would. We know that research shows that texting while driving increased the risk of crashing by 23%, so that's a huge increase. But I do want to say a lot of us think about cell phones as being distracting, and certainly they are, but anything in the vehicle can be distracting, whether it's a heated conversation that you might be involved in with somebody in the car, maybe you want to grab something to eat and eat on your way to where you're going because you're in a rush. Anything you're doing in the car that takes your time and attention is really distraction and something that we're asking you to avoid. There was just a story last week about an individual who actually was going down 95 taking selfies. And I'm sure he thought it was funny. I'm sure he thought, oh, aren't I cool doing this? But the reality is he took somebody's life. And that's a brother and a son who is not going to be with them for the rest of their lives. That's something they have to live with. So, while you might think that, oh, it's just going to take a second, the reality is the consequences can be really tragic. The other thing we want to just remind you about is wearing a seatbelt. It's such a quick thing. It takes 3 seconds, but it really makes such a difference in terms of your safety and arriving to your destination. We know a lot of people are good about buckling up in the front seat, but even if you're in the back seat, it's really important to buckle up. The reality is that somebody that's unbuckled in the back seat, if you have to stop suddenly, they actually become a projectile. And we've had some really tragic stories where they've actually injured or killed somebody in the front seat who was properly buckled. And so we just ask that you take those simple tips when you're in the vehicle, whether you're driving or whether you're a passenger. Our number one priority for all of you is to make sure you arrive at your destination safely, whether it's to school or work. We just want to make sure that you engage in those safe driving habits. Unfortunately, we lose about 50 people, young drivers each year, and our goal is 0 fatalities. Obviously, that's the only acceptable number. And I really want to thank everybody who came together today as a community. It really takes a community to reach the goal of 0 fatalities. Our law enforcement partners, our partners at Chesapeake Regional Safety Council, everybody coming together is what it takes. And so I'd ask that when you're out on the road, look out for our safety partners. When you see those flashing lights, whether it's a tow truck, whether it's our law enforcement, whether it's construction this time of year, you see a lot of construction out there. Please be cautious and move over because generally the lanes are constricted in those areas. So on behalf of the Department of Transportation and Governor Hogan, thank you for being here today, and I want to turn it over to our good friend and partner, Sheriff Jeff Gaylor.
Thank you, Chrissy, and good morning, everybody. It's the senior class we have here, right? So let's start off with a congratulations. You're almost there. Well done. And we want to see you get there safely. As Ms. Nizer said, far too many young people are involved in serious or fatal crashes. With a goal of 0, wouldn't that be a wonderful thing to accomplish? Here in Harford County, we have many partnerships, but on the traffic awareness, we have a Traffic Safety Advisory Board, which is established in code. And that's a partnership between all the county law enforcement agencies, the state police, and we have Lieutenant Tim Mullen, the local bear commander, who's going to be narrating this morning with us today, but the chiefs from Aberdeen, Havre de Grace, Bel Air. We have citizens on the Traffic Safety Advisory Board, as well as good partners such as MVA, the Highway Safety Office, and the Chesapeake, give me the whole name, Region Safety Council, and Debbie Jennings sits on that for us from the council. And you've seen us here at the school before. One of the initiatives that the Traffic Safety Advisory Board did was our student traffic accident reduction effort. We came and met you as you arrived at school. That was one of the pre-COVID things. We hope to get back to that. But this work group brainstorms ideas of how we can reach out to all of our community members and young people in particular in this effort. And Ms. Jennings brought this idea up, and we fully embraced it, and that's what led us here today. And I hope, and I can tell you, we heard about consequences this morning. I don't think that any police officer here cannot tell a story, unfortunately, of having to make a notification to a family. So there's not only repercussions or consequences for those that are hurt or injured or killed in an accident, but I can tell you, I can go back to, I was a trooper in this county going back 20-some years ago to a house on Tollgate Road and pulling up in the driveway to make a notification and seeing the mom come out the front door and having no pre-warning of why I was there, she knew right away. And you wouldn't want, and I wouldn't want, and none of us want to make those notifications, but you don't want to see that expression on the loved one of your family. So hopefully with prom coming, with graduation coming, with a fun summer after graduation coming for all of you, hopefully the lessons here today stick with you. As Ms. Nizer said, buckle up, put the phones down, and obey the speed limit. It seems like it's not that complicated, but it seems like it's sometimes maybe it's better to go a little fast. Maybe it's cool not to wear the seatbelt. These are simple things you can do that not only put your life in a better degree of safety, but those other commuters on the highway. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tim Mullen, the Barracks Commander, Lieutenant Tim Mullen, so we can get the program started. And again, congratulations, seniors.
Thank you, Sheriff. Good morning. As he said, I'm Lieutenant Tim Mullen. I'm with the Maryland State Police, assigned to the Bel Air Barrack as the commander. I promise you it's going to warm up any minute now. I'm also a 1994 graduate of North Harvard High School. Go Hawks. I'm going to do my best to describe the events and what's going on, what the law enforcement's doing, what the first responders are all doing on the scene here. What I do ask is everybody pay attention. If there's something going on that you're curious about, remember it so we can you can ask those questions during the Q&A. It's my opinion in this great county that we live in, very likely the most traumatic thing that you may go through is a traffic crash, and you'll see everything that's going on between if there's injuries, even if there's not injuries, the insurance, you're without a car, finding a ride everywhere. If you're hurt, you're going to the hospital, rehabilitation. And it's fortunate that crime isn't there, but a traumatic crash is probably one of the top 5 things you'll go through in this county. With that, the crash scene and the resulting injuries you're about to watch is a result of distracted driving, speeding through a work zone, and a passenger that was not wearing her seatbelt. The driver of the Suzuki SUV is distracted by cell phone usage and goofing off with his front seat passenger. The Suzuki is also traveling 10 miles per hour over the 40 mile per hour posted speed limit in a work zone, which is in place on Emerton Road, south of Wheel Road. The Suzuki crosses the center line and impacts the Ford Taurus. The Ford Taurus then hits the roadway worker, the guardrail that is being installed. A co-worker on scene has witnessed the crash and makes a 911 call.
Are you okay?
My leg! My leg!
Oh my God. Oh God.
Hartford County 911, what is the location of your emergency?
924 and Wheel Road.
Okay, what is the phone number you're calling me from, sir?
410-555-1212.
Okay, tell me exactly what happened.
2 cars hit each other. They're like head on. I think someone's trapped, and then one of the cars hit my coworker because we're working on the side of the road.
Okay, sir, I need you to stay on the line with me, okay? Someone else is gonna get an ambulance started for us, but I have a list of predetermined questions if you hold on, okay?
All right, hurry up.
Okay. How old is your coworker?
He's about 25 years old.
Okay, is he awake?
Somewhat. I gotta go.
Is he
Bye.
breathing, sir? Sir? Hello, sir, are you there? Sir, is he breathing? Can you hear me? Hello?
Do you understand? Calm down. Breathe. Breathe. Where are they?
So as law enforcement responds and arrives on the scene, one of the first things they're going to do is make sure that the scene is safe, blocking traffic, keeping the other vehicles from coming into the scene. Scene safety is one of their first priorities.
Dude, just what happened?
You okay? Medical be right here.
Okay, wait. What?
Along with that, they're going to get an initial assessment of the injuries of the people on scene. Oftentimes, law enforcement are the first ones on scene prior to EMS or the fire trucks.
Hey,
so they
just
will
relax,
have to
okay?
provide
Just stay in the
medical
car.
attention if needed.
Have a seat back in the car, all right? Just sit down.
Okay.
All right? Hey, what's your name?
Leah Piles, like,
Okay.
I don't know what happened. Like, a dude flew. There's a girl
Okay.
screaming. They wrecked my
All
car.
right, just relax, okay? Just relax. Stay in the car, all right?
Okay.
All right, where are you hurt?
Like, right here, like, the seatbelt
All
bruise.
right. All right, just stay here, okay?
Okay.
You're gonna be okay. The medic's coming. Hey, just relax.
Is there anything I can do? Or?
Nope, just stay there, all right? Stay there. What's your name, Abe?
I'm Brooklyn.
You're Brooklyn.
That's Emma.
Okay. Hey, Emma. Emma, you're gonna be okay, all right? Where you hurt? All right. Where you hurt?
I got my stomach and I think my knee.
All right. Just relax, okay? They're coming.
Generally speaking, this would be a relatively quick response by law enforcement and fire and EMS. In remote parts of the county, it may be 5-10 minutes before the first responder gets on scene.
what happened? They're like, she's screaming. I don't know what's happening. Are they gonna be okay at least?
Hopefully, it looks like everybody's. Is everybody here to help you?
So once the EMTs and paramedics arrive on scene, the law enforcement officers, troopers, and deputies will explain what they've seen, what they have, give them a basic synopsis of what the injuries they've observed. Generally speaking, law enforcement's happy when the EMTs and paramedics get there because we're not the greatest at it.
How are you, dear?
I'm alive.
You're alive. Okay. Are you able to walk?
I think so.
Is anything hurt on you right now?
Here, my feet.
I'm gonna have my partner check you out real fast before we get you.
Another thing that the law enforcement will do while they're treating the injuries when they first arrive is they'll try to speak to those involved just to get an idea of what may have happened or what they recall from the crash. The fire and EMS personnel are going to look at this car over here, decide what they need to do to get the occupants out of the vehicle and develop a plan for that. Law enforcement's now going to start looking for witnesses and driver and passenger information.
Real quick on TFC Mount, while the medics are working on you and everything, run me through what happened.
I don't know what happened. They like ran into me and like swerved to the side.
Okay, so you're coming this way or you're coming this way? So you're going this way and they're coming the opposite direction? And then they just, explain to me what happened. Did they come across, did you lose lane or anything, or did they just come across? Or?
I don't know, they like came across, they like hit me, I swerved, I don't.
Okay, so they came across the center lane and that's where they impacted you. Okay, all right. Do you have your license, registration, insurance card and everything?
Yeah, it should be like down here or something.
All right, awesome. What's the phone number for you?
Phone up mine?
Yep.
24.
All right. All right. Medics are going to keep working on you. I'm going to go check in with them and I'll get some information over here before we clear up, all right?
What the trooper's doing now, he's speaking to the first responder, the fireman on scene here, to kind of get an idea of how serious he believes the injuries are. Depending on how serious the injuries are, we may need to call in our crash team for a reconstruction, a more advanced investigation, so to speak.
Yep. Okay, do you think you're able, will we assist you? Do you think you're able to walk?
I can walk, yeah.
You want to easier
What the fuck?
Question while we're watching. Anybody here that does not wear their seatbelt? Honest, you do not wear your seatbelt? I don't know what the current numbers are, but I think 39% of people killed in crashes are not wearing seatbelts. In Harford County last year on state roads, the majority of our fatalities, had the person killed been wearing a seatbelt, they would have survived the crash.
So you guys, do I have a second to talk to them real quick while you're working on?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, sir, just giving you a heads up on TFC Miles State Police being audio and visual recorded. What happened?
I guess it was the phone. It was being passed back and forth. And
So you guys had a phone on you while you were driving?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What were you guys watching? Were you watching videos or
it was
anything?
just
Or
TikTok, like social media.
okay, so you're on your phone watching social media and everything like that. And you guys came. What happened? Run me through the crash.
I wasn't paying attention. She was shoving it in my face, and I took it and I looked for a second, and it was just. I just wasn't looking.
Okay, so you weren't paying attention to everything. Did you come across the center line, or?
No.
So you don't remember anything?
I don't remember anything.
Okay. All right, what's your first name, sir?
Brooklyn.
All right, what's your last name?
Nixon.
All right.
NIXON.
Gotcha. All right, I got your phone number, license, registration, everything in the car?
I'm sure.
Okay,
Yes.
Here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna get you guys an exchange of information, everything. We'll get the ball rolling. I'm gonna get a couple tow trucks started and everything. Obviously, they still got their concerns in regards to your friend in the car. They're still working to get her out and
Are they
everything,
all
all right?
okay?
What's that?
Are they all okay?
I mean, we're about to see. I gotta talk to the medics still. I haven't found out what their prognosis is, so we're gonna go from there, but you know, obviously, I got some paperwork I'll give you. Don't go anywhere yet. The medics are gonna take care of you, all right? Do you have any questions for me? All right.
At this point, too, the law enforcement will be looking for witnesses in the area. Today's world, there's a lot of cameras everywhere, so they'll look around to see if there's maybe some cameras off of some businesses in the area where they could get the footage of the collision.
Did you get those guys' information and everything, the witnesses?
I talked to them and just asked them what they saw.
Okay, did they give you guys anything useful? Or?
No, not really. They're just saying that they just say what they saw. That they think that this was a distracted driver that struck the guardrail and unfortunately hit their coworker. So their supervisor, they believe, is the one that called 911 who's over here. So.
Gotcha. If you get a chance, you could just grab their information,
Yeah,
just their license and the phone number for you, so I can list it as a witness and everything.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Sir.
You done with the driver?
I just got some paperwork for him. I'm gonna give him an information exchange and a couple citations real quick, and then he'll be good to go. If you guys transporting?
Yeah.
Where are you transporting to?
After you're done. Yeah.
Okay.
After you get done talking, you have the paperwork.
Okay, cool.
So right now the trooper is issuing a citation for the driver of the vehicle.
All right, sir, hey, real quick. All right, so your friend in the car and everything, what's her information?
Emma. Her name's Emma, E-M-M-A.
All right, and what's her last name?
O'Neill.
Gotcha.
O-N-E-I-L.
All right, and phone number for her, good. Do you have was your phone still in the car or what?
No, I have my phone on me. I guess she maybe put hers back in.
Okay, is there any way you could potentially give her family a call or anything like that, just to let her know? Like, obviously.
I guess, yeah, I can.
Okay, are you guys close and everything?
Yeah, she's my girlfriend.
Okay, all right. So here's what's going on, man. Obviously, from everything that you guys have told me so far from both parties involved, obviously, you told me you had your phone in your hand.
Yeah.
Okay, that can't do that in the state of Maryland is against the law, right?
Yeah.
Based off of everything, you are going to be at fault for this collision. and there are going to be a number of citations listed out here for you as well, all right?
Okay.
In regards to citations, you need to select one of the 4 options listed below within 30 business days. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
All right, do you have any questions for me?
No, am I going to be like arrested or?
No, you're not going to be arrested. These are all payable traffic citations, okay?
Okay.
But you do need to select one of these 4 options within 30 business days.
Okay.
All right, do you have any questions for me in regards to anything?
No.
All right, these are your copies. This is your exchange of information. There's a case number listed here, which ties back to an accident report. All right? Okay. Do you have any questions in regards to the accident report?
No.
All right. Medics are going to take you guys over to the hospital, get you guys taken care of. Do you have any questions?
No.
All right,
What
you're good
about
to
that
go.
one dude, like the dude that like flew? I didn't.
So we're still working on everything in regards to that, but for regards to what we're working right here, this is what's going to be, he's still getting transported as well, okay? Any other questions?
No.
All right, good to go.
Fines and points are increased for violations that contribute to an accident. So say infraction is 1 point, and if it causes a crash, it's 3 points, and the fines jump up too. So I believe the medics were saying that it's a priority 2 injury, which generally means it is not life-threatening. Just a few things to consider while they're getting her strapped down to the stretcher is some of the injuries. Passenger vehicle 1, broken ankle without surgery is $20,000. With surgery, broken ankle with surgery is $150,000. Broken clavicle, $40,000. Facial fracture, $50,000 to $100,000. Facial fractures also often involve cosmetic surgery. A conservative estimate is $310,000 for the passenger in vehicle 1 just for their treatment. The driver in vehicle 2 had facial injuries amounting to about $30,000. The most significant, however, was a construction worker who was hit. Particularly with the leg injuries, this could easily be $500,000. Injury numbers do not contemplate loss of wages and rehabilitation and the like.
Yeah, there's a chance I can grab her while you guys are working on her.
What's that?
There's a chance I can talk to her while you guys are working on her.
Yeah, that's fine. No, she's going in the yellow ambulance.
Yellow, okay. Where's she getting transported to? Where's she getting transported to?
Bayview,
Okay.
downtown.
Still 2?
Yeah.
Okay. Emma, real quick, I'm TFC Miles State Police, being audio and visual recorder. Can you tell me anything about what happened today? You don't remember? Did you guys have a phone or anything? Were you got anything? What's going on? TikTok videos? Okay. All right. All right. So you guys were watching TikTok.
So they were making a TikTok while they were driving down the road.
Do you remember any of it? Okay. All right. You guys
Good?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay.
Passenger that is.
So the driver of this
driver,
vehicle.
that one's going to be a refusal.
A few feet. Okay.
All right.
Yep.
The one that you had is going to be a refusal.
Okay, so the male driver on this.
Male driver
Okay.
of that vehicle.
What do we have on the pedestrian truck?
Pedestrian truck. He's going to go by ground to Bayview Trauma down in
Okay.
Commerce City, and so is the passenger
Vehicle 1.
of the vehicle.
Okay.
So,
All right. Thank you.
no problem.
So the 2 with the worst injuries are going down to Bayview in Baltimore City. So now your mom and dad get to find out that you're in Bayview in Baltimore City and they have a job up here and they got to drive all the way down to Baltimore worrying about you. So that would be it. Once they get the victims in the ambulance on their way, the trooper will get the tow on the scene, trying to get this road cleared up as fast as possible. That concludes the scene.
First, I wanted to thank the members of the Criminal Justice Club for putting that on for everyone. And I hope you guys and girls took this seriously, because I'd never want to have to get that notification in the morning that something happened to one of you. Okay? Does anyone in the audience have a question? Hold on.
So, when they were cutting the things, was that the fabled Jaws of Life? Okay, cool. Thank you.
That is what they use to cut the vehicle. Jaws of Life is one of the terms used for it, yes. Does anyone else have any questions?
Why would they choose the farthest hospital?
Oh yeah, that is.
That is very.
Good point.
All right, so first of all, I'm Lieutenant Kadoff, Bel Air Volunteer Fire Company. The question was about the jaws of life. Yes, what you saw cutting the doors off and everything like that, yes, that is the jaws of life that you guys all see on TV. Your question. So because of their trauma and their injuries, Upper Chesapeake can't handle that because the clouds are too low, helicopter's not available. So because the Bayview is a little bit closer and they are a Trauma 1 trauma hospital, we can go to Bayview. All right, if the helicopter was open for you guys, then they'd be going down to shock trauma. So, is there any further questions from me?
You had a question? Come on.
Sorry, last question. So you gave an estimate about the cost of everything. Is that with insurance or without?
The question was, were the costs that the trooper listed, and that's Lieutenant Mullen from the State Police, by the way. Yes, that's the cost of the injuries. Some insurance coverage would be or some insurance will cover some of those costs, not all.
All right, can you all give everybody a hand out here for doing all this today? I want to thank you on behalf of everybody here at Patterson Mill for coming out and showing us this, because as Deputy Pruitt said, none of us want to get a call, and it is easy to lose concentration when you're distracted when you're driving. So you hear the screaming, gentlemen. Imagine yourselves being cut out of a car. You'd probably be a little upset yourself too, so it's very serious stuff.
Well, thank you for being here today. It's nice to be out and about after COVID and being locked away for a while, but I just want to make sure you guys understand what it took to do what we're doing today. There are so many people involved, so many different departments involved, and to be the first in Harford County, I think it's pretty cool for you guys. You'll remember this for a lifetime. You'll end up telling your kids about this at some point. Show me. Yeah. We all know. Yeah. I know. I see it every day. It's not just teens, it's everybody. Seatbelts? All right, I'm hearing all the time. How about every time? Okay. Did I hear somebody say you can't breathe with a seatbelt? Okay. All right. How about this one? The back seat. It's safe back there, right? Seems safe back there. You're in the back seat. You're away from the crash, probably, right? We'll get back to that. All right, so let me introduce myself. I'm Dr. Janet Bayhuth. I'm a crash safety engineer. I do mechanical engineering of crashes. I own a company called Impact Research, and we have a nonprofit company called Crash Corps, which is a crash center for research and education. So a lot of what we do is study car crashes. We study car crashes, and then on the nonprofit side, we get to come and talk to you guys and kind of impart what we learn on you guys. I'm a wife and mother of 3 boys, 5 baseball teams, and 1 golfer. It's a lot of laundry. I work for BMW and Hyundai for their accident research programs. When a bad, an interesting BMW or Hyundai crash happens around the country, we go investigate it. We talk to the occupants. We get their medical records. We look at the cars. I'm going to show you a little bit about that and relate it to what you guys saw outside today. My most favorite aspect to share of this is the significance of seatbelts. which is a little bit more and deeper than the importance of seatbelts. We all know the importance of seatbelts, but what's the significance of them? That's what I like to share. So Impact Research and Crash Corps established in 2007, and as I mentioned, it's engineers, epidemiologists who study injury. Statisticians, we studied crash data, injury data, and DBAs, database administrators, we have a ton of that, ton of data, so much data about crashes. And software developers. Together we work with BMW, Toyota, Hyundai, Volkswagen, and even government agencies. NHTSA is the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. This is the government agency that says your car must pass certain standards in order to be sold in the US. Well, thank goodness, because otherwise you might be driving a car that wasn't worth driving. So it's the feds who say you have to pass these certain standards to be sold in the US. We also do work for Maryland DOT, Department of Transportation, and the Highway Safety Office. A lot of Highway Safety Office people here today. Let's see. We study car crashes. How did they happen? More importantly, why did they happen? And the why is what helps us to prevent them in the future. So I study car crash injuries. That's my favorite part of all of this. Why did the injuries happen? And how? How do we prevent them in the future? We crunch data. Every crash that happens out there is data. Every crash report is data. We collect all of it. We dig into it, and we see what we can see. There's a lot of information in there, and we don't know what it is until we get to it. But we collect data, look at it, discover whatever we can find. And ultimately, my companies make it safer in cars and on the roadways. That's the goal. So this is what we do. We look at all kinds of crashes, frontals, sides, rears, rollovers. Multiple impact crashes is what you saw out there today. I'll explain that in a little bit. And this is what we do every day, study from beginning to the middle of the crash, to the end of the crash, and even after the crash to see what the injuries have done to the people's lives and how now they have to act differently and live differently because of it. So pardon me while I use some notes on this. This just occurred to me recently. So how do you see your 10-year-old self? What were you like? I heard stupid. Yeah, what were you like as 10? Were you immature? Were you smart but not all that smart yet? Were you talented but maybe not as talented as you thought you were at the time, right? So come back here. So I have 3 kids, and I asked them this question in preparation here today. 16, 14, and 12. I have 3 boys. How do you see your 10-year-old self? What were you like? And these are the 3 answers that I got. Short. Okay, short. Weird. Okay. And then my 12-year-old said, not so smart. And then he continued and said, I was not so smart, but I knew stuff. I just see it in a different way now. And I thought, geez, this 12-year-old kid, he understands how life works. It's really life experience, isn't it? It's failures and it's successes, and it's living that life which provides you the wisdom to see how you've grown. So in preparing for this today, I was wondering, how do I give you my life experience? How do I tell you, and how do I make you feel what I feel? And how do I make you know, like hear what I know? I don't think I can do it. I don't think there's a way to actually give it to you. But today I want to stretch you a little bit. I want to hopefully get a little bit closer to that. And I want you to see life through our eyes, because it's living life that gives you the experience you have at 16, 17, and 18. And then again, 15 years later when you're 30. And then 18 years later when you're 48, it took all that life experience for me to know what I know. And for you guys to know what you know at 16, looking back at 10. So I'm hoping that you can take what we give you here, I hope that you can just take it and put yourself not in the shoes, but as these kids were in the car, actually be them for a minute and be vulnerable and feel that and understand that for a minute. Because the day will come, and it might have come already for some of you, that you'll be faced with challenges and dares and peer pressure, and then the day will come where this stuff that we're going to talk about today, it sure will come in handy. So after today's presentation, I hope you can see it in a different way. So let's go back to the scene. Pretty cool scene, wasn't it? All around the country, people are trying to do this. Harford County did it for you today. It's really hard to do what we did today, so congratulations for seeing it. We had a Ford and we had a Suzuki in a construction zone, normally 50 miles an hour, 25 miles an hour travel speed, 50. He was above the speed limit in this construction zone. And to get a little bit closer, here's what happened. It was the Ford who crossed the double yellow lines. Texting, TikTok, Snapchat, whatever it is. Crossed the double yellow lines, didn't mean to, but he did. Crossed the double yellow lines, caused a crash. And as you can see, it's the front end passenger side on both cars that contacted. And what happens? Momentum causes them to do-si-do, basically. Turn around each other and rotate. It's expending energy, thank goodness, because that's what helps you inside the crash. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then it was the Suzuki that did a 360 and ultimately hit the guardrail. Unfortunately, there was a construction worker standing there. And by the way, let me stop for a minute. We didn't make this stuff up. This happens all the time. We're just recounting it for you. This isn't made up. So we hit the construction worker and sustained plenty of injuries because of it. I'm going to go through each of the cars and each of the people and tell you what happened and how it happened and why it happened. So the first car, Brooklyn was driving. He's a minor. He's belted. Minor injury, he has a provisional license, driving distracted. All of that adds up to not good. Emma's in the front seat, unbelted, serious injury. You have a belted occupant, minor injury, unbelted occupant, serious injury. It's physics. It is what it is. It makes sense. And I'm going to explain more for you. In the Suzuki was Leah, minor, she's belted, multiple impacts. The first impact was just that first car, was with the car. Front passenger side to front passenger side, that's the first impact. She has airbags deploy, the other car has airbags deploy. You might think the car crash is over. Not for Leah. She's rotating now, her body's thrown around inside the car, belted, but still thrown around inside the car and rotated at a very high rate. And now she hits the guardrail. Second impact. Her airbag already deployed. So what happens on that second impact? Now she's in a car from the 1970s. She doesn't have the benefit of the airbag now. Luckily, she was belted. And Nick, construction crew, serious injury. We'll go through how all of this happened. So when we do car crash investigations for BMW and Hyundai, we take so much time to look at everything because you never know what's going to pop up. We do a scene inspection. They'll spend hours there at the scene trying to collect evidence or contact marks from the car, scrape marks or rubber on the road from the tires. Vehicle inspection, they'll take 3,000 data points. They'll have a download, which, by the way, in a download, I know what you were doing 5 seconds before the crash. So if you think you can get away with speeding or steering the wrong way, or were your brakes on, or were your ABS brakes engaged, we know all of that for 5 seconds before the crash with these downloads. So we collect a ton of data. We look at all the medical records because we have to put the injuries and connect it to what happened in the car. And ultimately, from the car manufacturer's point of view, it's so that they can make the car safer. That's why they're doing this. We do a reconstruction and a simulation, and then there's an engineering review. And we talk to all of the experts from the car companies. We get all of our experts together, and we come up with, this was the significance of this crash. This is why these injuries happened. And if we had all the money in the world and all the technology in the world, here are certain things that you can do to prevent those injuries. Okay, a note about occupant kinematics. This is just physics. It's simple, really. in which way will my body move in a crash? Well, it depends, right? It depends. If you have a crash force going this way, your body is going to move that way. So the simple thing to remember is the body moves toward the crash. Okay? So think about all this when we go through the cars and we talk about the kids' injuries. So crash force frontal to a tree, the crash force is going to the front of the car, the body moves toward the front of the car because you have to, that's physics. Same with the rear movement, body movement toward the rear. Same with driver's side, passenger side. Wherever the forces are, that's where your body moves. Your body moves always toward the crash. So let's go to Brooklyn. Again, he's belted with minor injuries. Here are his contusions. That's it. He has what they call a seatbelt sign. It's literally bruising from the seatbelt on him. Pretty good way to walk out away from a crash with just bruising. Contusions to the right knee, upper leg. So when he's in a crash that's coming from that direction, his body is going to go that direction. His legs are down in the footwell. There's a knee bolster there. His knees whacked the knee bolster. Nice bruise. He'll be fine. So here's the outcome. He's got some pain. It resolves in time. He will likely be convicted of distracted driving, which unfortunately, with a provisional license, carries a hefty weight. Luckily, there's no drugs or alcohol involved, and I guarantee you they will check it. And at the end of the day, he wanted to be a cadet at the Hartford County Sheriff's Office. Not anymore. That's done. They'll never accept you. Okay, Emma, unbelted, serious injury. So here's what I want you to think about. That encircled in yellow is called a B-pillar. It's that structure between the windshield and the driver door and the window. The B-pillar is what did her in. She'll be fine, she'll live, she'll go on, but right now she has a subdural hematoma on the right. Subdural hematoma, your brain is covered by just a sheath, a covering called a dura. When you hit your head pretty hard, really hard, you're going to have a contusion or blood gathering, a hematoma. It's a big clot of blood on your brain underneath that dura. Not a good thing to have. Facial fractures, as you can imagine, she's hitting that B-pillar. She's thrown right up into that B-pillar. She'll have a lot of facial fractures. And to match, of course, contusions for the right. She'll also have rib fractures, 5 through 9. It's probably not the B-pillar, but more of the dash, more of the door. All these ribs right here, broken. And underneath that, a matching pneumothorax. Pneumothorax is basically just air in your chest. So how the heck did she get air in her chest? She's not open, she's not cut. How does she get air in her chest? It's the lung, of course, has air in it, right? And if you squish it hard enough, if you compress it hard enough, it's going to bust. It's going to break. All those air pockets just open up. And now instead of air being in the lung, the air is in the chest. And the problem with that is you can't breathe very well. It's hard to breathe now. She also has foot fractures. Her foot got caught up in the damage on that crash. She's got foot fractures, and unfortunately, it's going to change her life. So with a subdural hematoma, you can imagine you're going to have headaches, beyond migraine headaches, pretty bad headaches. She's going to take 6 months to feel like herself again. It's a long time to not feel like yourself. It's not a great feeling. 2 facial reconstruction surgeries. She has a chest tube to get the air out of her chest. With that, limited exercise. And by the way, if you have a pneumothorax once, you have a recurrence rate of 50% to come back. 4 months of PT for her foot, but it's a lifelong concern. She'll always be thinking about that foot. Unfortunately, it's not perfect again. And at the end of the day, she doesn't qualify for states, cross country, and you're not going to run in college. That sucks. Yeah. I'm glad it's not true. All right, Leah, she's in the Suzuki, and that is not a picture of a Suzuki. She's belted with moderate injuries. Contusions, seatbelt sign, she's belted. I expect it. Subarachnoid hemorrhage, right frontal parietal region. Subarachnoid is the netting that's around your brain. And it's filled with all these tiny little blood vessels, veins and arteries, tiny little things that are tiny, tiny, tiny. If you shake it too hard, they shear, break open, and now you're bleeding in your brain, on your brain. And this is happening in a fast rotation. Doesn't even have to be an impact. If the car rotates fast enough, now her brain inside is rotating, and that's enough to shear these arteries and veins in your brain. Hematoma on the right scalp, it's a really deep contusion, hemorrhage, blood collection. And then also laceration on her right cheek. And this is all from the airbag. So here's the interesting thing about this multiple impact crash. Remember how we said airbag deployed on the first crash? She rotated out of it, hit the guardrail. She needed the airbag on that second one, didn't have it. She's out of place, out of position. When car manufacturers are designing airbags, and I'll show you this in a little bit, they expect you to be in position. If you're like this, reaching for the whatever you dropped, radio, picking up your phone, whatever, you are out of position. You are not going to be protected by that airbag, not the way they want you to. You could be hurt by it. So unfortunately, in this case, she was not protected by an airbag because it already deployed. This is her second impact in the same crash. All right, Nick, construction crew. Severe injuries. So he's standing there doing his work. He was unfortunately contacted by the front of the car, pushed through the guardrail, fell back. He's got a concussion from the ground, a fracture to his occipital region, which is where that red line is, the back of your head. Nice fracture there. Right fracture, patella, and ACL, probably from the bumper fender area. Doesn't take much. I'm sure some of you have had ACL injuries. It doesn't take much. Base of the femur fracture from the bumper, the fender. Contusions, bilateral legs, both legs on the front, both legs on the back. And the outcome, headaches. If you've ever had a concussion or multiple concussions, you know that headaches are just a thing. And they are lasting and they are disruptive. Decreased concentration is a definite as well. For the back, he had T9 through 6, or 6 through 9. It's thoracic. That's from hitting the ground. An immobilizing back brace, therapy for 6 months. Always have trouble now with that for the rest of his life. Surgery on the patella, ACL. You can come back from that, but it takes months and probably 9 months of therapy. And he's a soccer player. Going to be on the sidelines for a good 18 months because of it. So think for a second, what if this was your fault? We're all great drivers. We're all the best drivers we can be. We all know how to drive while texting. I think we do it, right? We all know how to overcome adversity on the road. But what if this was your fault? So there's a lot of things that come with it, dealing with somebody's severe injuries or your own, right? Criminal consequences, personal liability, and the social consequences. Have you ever thought about that? What if you hurt somebody in your class, and now you have to deal with everybody wondering why you could have done that? How could you have done that? So whether it's an actual social consequence or it's just you thinking it might be a consequence, it's still there. Same with the emotional consequences that you just have to deal with within yourself, not to mention everybody else reacting to you. Okay, physics. What happened? What's a crash? A car's moving, and a car could hit anything, a tree, a wall, another car, anything, and then it stops. That's simply what a crash is, right? It's easy enough. So that's on the outside of the crash. What happens inside the car during the crash? This is what's more important to everyone. You have one crash, and there are 3 impacts. First, the car impacts the object, whatever it was, tree, car, whatever. And then the occupants impact the car. And then the organs impact the skeleton. 3 impacts, 1 crash. Multiply that by 2 if you have a multiple impact crash, like Leah. So again, car impacts a tree. Occupant impacts the dash. The brain impacts the skull. Unfortunately, you don't have a seatbelt for your skull or your brain. It's just free floating in there. It's kind of easy to move. Unfortunately, there's no seatbelt. So what does a crash feel like?
When we drive fast, we don't realize the danger we're in. If you're driving at 90 kilometers per hour and you crash, the speed your body impacts is the same as falling from the first floor of a building. At 110 kilometers per hour, the impact is the same as falling from the 5th floor. And at 125 kilometers per hour, the impact is like falling from the 9th floor.
Yeah, the faster you go, the bigger the mess. We all drive 78. You drive 80? Yeah. It's the 9th floor that you're falling from, let alone falling off this stage. The 9th floor, it's 78 miles an hour. It's a big crash, but we all take it for granted, don't we? Because we're in our big cars. We're in our big cars with our airbags and hopefully our seatbelt. But the point is, the higher the speed, the higher the crash force you need to deal with. So even at 25 miles an hour, which granted is like nothing, it's hard to drive 25 miles an hour, isn't it? On your way home today in your residential, try to drive 25. It's hard. It's really hard. 25 miles an hour is 4,500 pounds of crash force that you need to deal with. That's the size of a rhinoceros, a hippo. That's a lot of crash force at 25 miles an hour. So get up to 78, and you're dealing with something impossible unless you're protected. So this is interesting. Seatbelts in Maryland. Every year, the U.S. Government mandates that all the states put together an estimate of how many in Maryland are belted. And Maryland's pretty good. Across the board, we have about 90% of us are belted, 10% are not. So we get an A, I guess. So year over year, it's about 90% belted, 10% unbelted. So in 2020, there were 270 people killed in a vehicle in Maryland. And half of them were unbelted, half of them were belted. And what I want to point out is this. So the 10% that are always unbelted in Maryland, they make up almost half of the people who died in Maryland. So here's the point. For 134 unbelted people who were killed in 2020, we could have saved 80 Marylanders if they were belted. A seatbelt has 60% effectiveness across the board, no matter what crash you're talking about. Unfortunately, a seatbelt can't help you in every crash. Sometimes they're too catastrophic. Sometimes it's right on the driver's side door at high speeds. Seatbelt's not going to help you. But 60% of the time, it's going to help you. 80 people could still be on this earth right now. So question, why a provisional license in Maryland? Here's all the rules about your provisional license. And by the picture, you can probably guess it's data. And we're not doing it just to make you mad. We're not doing it just to make your life difficult. All this data that I talked to you about that we collect all the time from all these car crashes, it tells us, when we dig through it, it tells us that, hey, you shouldn't put teens in a car together driving for this reason, because crashes happen. We shouldn't have people driving, teens driving between 12 and 5 a.m., because that's when all the crashes were happening. So why wouldn't you take that away? Why wouldn't you make that illegal to take that away and save a whole lot of lives because of it? So yeah, it might be a drag. It might be hard because you're not supposed to be driving your friends around. It might seem like it's just another rule, but there's data backing it up. So safety and technology. We're driving computers. If anybody has a newer car, there's some sort of computer in your car that helps you drive. There are interesting things like adaptive lighting, auto emergency braking. I'm sure a lot of your cars have it now. By the way, every car manufacturer is mandated to have automatic emergency braking starting in 2022. That's now. Frontal collision warning, intersection collision warning, blind spot monitoring, lane departure, lane keep assist. All of these are great, great things that your car is helping you with. It's computers. It's data helping you drive. And advanced driver assistance systems. I'm pointing out assistance for a good reason. You'll see in a minute. So autonomous vehicles. Anybody have a Tesla? No. You've seen Teslas? I don't have one either. You've seen Teslas. You know what they are. They have what's called autopilot, right? You've heard about Teslas in the news. So we'll get there in a minute, but there are 5 levels of autonomy for cars. Level 0 is your great-grandfather's car. There's nothing. There's no computers. It's all mechanical. It's up to the driver to do everything. Level 1, feet off. It's assisted. So cruise control. Probably everybody's car has cruise control, and we've all used it, right? Level 2 is hands off. It's partial automation. So what it is lane keep assist. And your car will see you're drifting off the lane and bounces you back. Drifts off and it bounces back. So it's keeping you in lane. Hands off. Eyes off is high automation. It's cruise control. You don't necessarily have to be watching for the car to be driving and helping you drive. Mind off is full automation. You can sleep, you can eat, you can drink, you can play chess, whatever you want in the car. That's full automation. And then autonomous is your little brother needs to be picked up from soccer, program the car to go get him. Doesn't need a driver. And then your 12-year-old will come back, okay? So Teslas, it has autopilot. Which level? Which level do you think it is? 3, 2s, 4s. Yep. Tesla is a 2, but it's got autopilot, which means nothing. So my point here is it's assisted driving. Not until it's fully autonomous would anybody be able to depend on automatic emergency braking, because it's only there to help you. By the way, if you have automatic emergency braking and it starts to engage because it sees you about to crash and you tap the brakes, you're on your own. The system turned off. You don't have automatic emergency braking anymore. It's up to you, because the car is there to assist you. It is not driving for you. It is not saving you from crashing. It's only there to assist you. So keep that in mind as you get newer and newer cars as we go. So what exactly do seatbelts do? They lower the crash forces, and they allow you to walk away from a crash. It's really what they do. Keep in mind, airbags do not do that. Airbags are meant to work in conjunction with the seatbelt, and there's a ton of different bags. Look at the pedestrian bag that comes out of the hood. I haven't seen that live yet. I haven't seen it in person, but it's happening. A whole bunch of airbags. Airbag on the seatbelt, pretty cool. Centerline airbag, that's for the front seat. When you have 2 people in the front seat, you have a far side or a near side collision, then there's a lot of head knocking and a lot of injury that way. So a centerline airbag, which I think Mercedes and BMW has now, prevents any kind of occupant-to-occupant connection. So pretensioners and force limiters are in the seatbelt. Check out this video.
We can see here the seatbelt pretensioner in action. It actively tightens the seatbelt, helping to ensure you're securely in your seat. Then, to help prevent injury from the seatbelt itself, the force limiter reduces the pressure of the seatbelt against your chest. Together they work with the front airbag to give you better protection.
If you don't have a seatbelt on and you're involved with an airbag, you will be injured. It's just like if you're in a multiple impact crash and you are now in the face of the airbag as it's deploying, you will be injured. The airbag is meant to work with the seatbelt and only with the seatbelt. That's how they're designed. So don't think that the airbag's going to help you walk away. This is how fast they deploy. You can't prevent yourself from touching it, hitting it, impacting it. It's faster than you can blink. It even looks slower on this video for some reason, but it's faster than you can think. They're out. All right, backseat bullets. Sitting in the back seat seems safer. There's so much technology in the front, all these airbags in the front, so maybe it's not so safe anymore. But the point is this, backseat bullets are the people who are sitting behind you, who are unbelted, who are now going to crush you during a frontal collision, simply because of physics, simply because they didn't buckle up. And this is how it rolls. This is at a 35-mile-an-hour crash.
Simulated 35-mile-per-hour impact. The unbelted dummy slams into the back of the driver's seat, pushing the driver dummy into the deploying airbag and steering wheel. Drivers are twice as likely to be killed in crashes when the occupant behind them is unrestrained.
That's at 35. When you go home today, drive 35 miles an hour and imagine stopping. That's 35 miles an hour. It seems like nothing, but it's a whole heck of a lot, especially when you have somebody sitting behind you who is now going to crush you into the airbag and the steering wheel. And as far as riding in the back, its rear seat passengers are 3 times more likely to die in a crash if they're unbelted. There's no reason to not be belted. This is going to help you walk away. So food for thought, why not buckle up? It's uncomfortable. Well, that's why they have seat adjusters and belt adjusters, so it's not uncomfortable. Fix it. I might get trapped in a burning car after a crash. Fires are so extremely rare, not to mention there are door locks that unlock during a crash, and there's fire prevention. It's not necessary for short trips and low speeds. Even low speeds hurt. Seatbelt could hurt me. Bruises are better than breaks, for sure. Seatbelt is not necessarily in the back. We just saw that it is. It's not just about you anymore. It's about the people you're going to crush and hurt. I'm a good driver? Yeah, but do you trust Joe Driver? Because I don't. The airbag will protect me. No need for a seatbelt. That's not true. They're designed to work with the seatbelt. And it's better to be thrown clear from a collision. Actually, no. 77 times greater risk. So what are my odds at Patterson Mill High School? These are all the odds. 22 students will be involved in a crash this year. 6 will be injured. And 1 out of every 12,500 people was killed in a Maryland crash. That's 10 people in Harford County this year. One quick little thing about your little brother, your little cousin who sits in the back seat and doesn't want the baby seat anymore. I did a crash recently where I had an 8-year-old who was not in a booster seat. She should have been. The seatbelt hanged her, basically. She should have been up higher. It's not snug on her shoulders and hips. This has nothing to do with you guys, but you can see it very quickly, very easily if you have a younger person. They have to be snug on the shoulders and hips. If it's riding on the neck, they could be killed, like that little girl recently. All right, one more important question. When will your crash happen? Hopefully never, but it's life. All right, today's message, don't let a mistake or a poor choice change the course of your life or somebody else's, because it will. So you have the power to decide how your life will go, the course of your life. Don't let something stupid change it. And that is it. Thank you for your attention, guys. Appreciate it.
Good morning. My name's Suzanne Elsie. I'm from Kent Island, across the Bay Bridge, and I'm not here to share any nice stats or anything like that with you. I'm here to share my story with you. For every crash that happens, there's a story that you don't hear about, and that's the story that really matters. It's the story of the victims, the families, the friends, and how they are impacted by a poor choice that leads to a tragedy. And when it comes to accidents, car crashes, you always think it's not going to happen to you, it can't happen to you. Well, I used to be the same way. I always thought, I didn't worry because, you know, I wasn't going to be in a car crash, my kids weren't. Well, this story is about my youngest son, who happened to be a volunteer firefighter and an EMT for 3 years, and a Maryland State Police Explorer for 1 year. And I'll just be honest, the story, when I tell it, it's not easy to tell, and it's not going to be easy for you guys to see it. I'm telling you that right now. Especially this week is real emotional for me because he was killed with his three best friends, I'm sorry, there was 4 of them, on April 10th of 2013. And of course, this is the April 10th week, the end of the week. And that was, he was somebody that you thought that he was the last person anyone ever thought would be involved in a car crash. And unfortunately, like I said, it was all 4 of them. So I want to share the story, and as I do, I just want you to think about your parents, your friends, girlfriend, boyfriend, siblings, and think about how they would be impacted. Because what people don't get is it's not just the victims in the car that suffer. It's probably the ones that live that suffer even more forever. It's not like you're only going to grieve for a month or 2, trust me. It does go on forever. I want to tell you a little bit about the boys before I get into the story. They were your normal teenagers. They loved to hang out with their friends, go to the movies. Corey was he was the driver of the car. He was the captain of the football team. Tyler was on the homecoming court. They were all just best friends. They grew up together. Harrison and Tyler were best friends from the 7th grade on. If you saw one, you saw the other. They were never apart. Tyler was, to say he was a good kid, I know you're going to think I'm bragging, but he was like beyond a good kid. I mean, he worked from the time he was 14 years old. And from that point on, I never bought him clothes, school supplies, nothing. I offered, but he always wanted to buy everything himself. He dated the same girl all 4 years of high school. He was just a really good kid. After the crash, I got a lot of emails and letters and cards from people telling me stories about Tyler and how he had impacted their life somehow. And just talking about Tyler, well, one of my favorite stories, I loved it because it really showed Tyler, the true essence of Tyler and who he was. But she said that they were at the firehouse one day, just kind of goofing off, running around the firehouse, being typical teenagers. And she ran into a door and jammed her finger. And she started crying. It hurt really bad. And she said Tyler ran over to her, scooped her up, ran her to the back of the ambulance, and started mumbling all this medical jumbo, all these terms that she had no clue what he was saying. And she couldn't help but laugh because she just hurt her finger, and he's acting like she was just hit by a car. And she said, Tyler, all this really isn't necessary. It's just a jammed finger. And he said, I know, but I made you laugh and forget your finger was even hurting for a few minutes. And that's the kind of kid Tyler was, always trying to make everyone else happy. As close as he was to his friends, he was especially close to his siblings, his 2 older brothers and his older sister. He was really close to the oldest brother. My oldest son, there was 10 years difference, and he was a volunteer firefighter, my oldest son, and Tyler idolized him. Tyler wanted to grow up and be just like him. So when he turned 16, he joined the fire department, and by the time he died, he had 350 hours of firefighter training. He was certified in Fire 1, Hazmat, EMT, and when he died, he was just about ready to finish Fire 2. Sorry, guys, I told you, I do get a little bit emotional, especially, that's why I try not to look at the video too much. So I can remember one time I was at my son's house. It was Christmas morning. We were in the middle of opening up presents. Tyler had just gotten his certification to go on fire calls. And all of a sudden, in the middle of opening gifts, the fire sirens, you could hear them go off. And Tyler and Chris just looked at each other and jumped up. They were so excited. This was going to be their first fire call together. And of course, my heart just like, oh no, I didn't want this to happen. So as they're running out the door, I told Christopher, my oldest son, I said, please take care of him. And he looked at me and he said, Mom, don't worry. It's my little brother. I got his back. I would never let anything happen to him. Eventually, those words were just going to come back to haunt him, I think, and really have an impact on him. But that became one of their favorite memories. Was that was their first fire. They got to work together, and that they talked about that every year after that. They only got to work a couple fires after that, but that first one was so special to them. So Tyler went on through high school, and he never talked about his fire calls, by the way, or his medical calls. He would always say, I can't talk about it, Mom, HIPAA privacy regulations. But one night he came home, and he was literally glowing. I mean, he came in the doors all smiles, and I can't even begin to tell you how he was just glowing. And he said, Mom, I got to tell you this, what happened today. They were at the firehouse, and a call went out for a man in cardiac arrest. And it happened to be literally right across the street from the firehouse. So him and another EMT were there. They were the first on the scene. They immediately started CPR and started working on him. And eventually they did bring him to where he had a stable enough heartbeat that they could transport him. And Tyler wanted to ride with them and the paramedics to the hospital. And right before they were leaving Anne Arundel Medical Center, he said, Mom, the wife had come up to him and she was crying, and she said, I can't let you leave without hugging you. She said, do you realize you just saved my husband's life? She said, because of you, my kids still have their father. And he said, Mom, that was the most incredible feeling, knowing that I saved somebody's life. He said, and that was the point where Tyler decided, okay, he was going to save lives forever. That's what he wanted to do with his life, was save lives. A couple days before the crash, he had a rare night off of work, and he came home, and we had a chance to actually spend some time together. We had a great dinner. We sat around laughing and talking about memories of years gone by. And he gets very serious. Well, first when he came in, what was really funny was it was another one of these, giddy, glowing, really good moods, because, believe it or not, he just bought a pair of shoes. That's what he was happy about. But they were special shoes to him because they were very expensive, and he paid for them himself after saving for several weeks and giving up, going to the movies and things like that, because he really, really wanted these Nikes. And it just set the tone for the whole night. We had a great time. We were sitting on the couch after dinner, and he gets real serious, and he tells me, he says, Mom, I got to tell you something. He said, if I don't get hired with Anne Arundel County, he said, as a firefighter, he said, then I'm going to join the military. And there was a special branch of the service, I don't remember what it was called, but they are the paramedics that go into the hostile territory and rescue the wounded soldiers. And I remember telling him, I said, Tyler, I said, get that thought out of your mind right now. I said, that's way too dangerous. And I said, if anything ever happened to you, I said, I couldn't go on, nor would I want to. And he gets up off the couch, and he puts his hand on my knee and kisses my forehead, and he says, you're going to be okay, Mom, I promise. And what I didn't know at the time, that was going to be the last moment I'd ever get to spend with him. He went on and went to bed. And the next day, I got up, I went to work at my office in Columbia. And as I'm leaving at 4:30, my oldest son, the firefighter, called me. and he wanted to know if I'd heard from Tyler. He said a call went out for a really bad crash on Cox Neck Road on Ken Island, and that there were multiple people trapped, possible fatalities. He said he tried to call Tyler. He wanted to make sure he was okay, but Tyler didn't answer. I said, okay, well, he's probably on the call. It's on Ken Island. And I knew he was going to be at the firehouse that day. So I tried to call Tyler, and Tyler even if he was on a call, he would answer me. And he would just real quick pick up the phone, Mom, I'm on a call, I'll call you back. But he never did. And I had an hour-and-a-half commute back from Columbia back to Ken Island. So I called his stepfather, who happened to be on Ken Island. I said, do me a favor, just ride by the firehouse, make sure Tyler's car is there so I don't have to freak out and worry all the way home. So a few minutes later, he called me back and he said, I hate to tell you, but his car's not there. So I tried calling Tyler. The whole way home, I tried calling him. And I ended up calling 16 times, leaving voicemails. By the time I got back to the island, I was frantic because this was not like Tyler at all. His sister was looking for him and making phone calls. We called both the places he worked at. We called some of his friends. Nobody knew where he was. And we didn't know where his car was. We had no idea. So by the time we got to the island, I'm freaking out, and I told his stepfather, I said, I want you to go to the crash site, see if it's his car. Well, he went down Cox Neck Road, and unfortunately, fire trucks were blocking the crash scene. So he couldn't even get close enough to see what the cars were. But there was a lot of people on just spectators, I guess you would say, and news channels were there, lined all up and down the street. And he went up to a group of teenagers, and he asked them if they knew who was involved, and they told him it was Corey, Mike, Harrison, and Tyler. That's all they knew. So he calls me on the phone. He says, it was Tyler in the crash. And I'm sitting in a Safeway parking lot at this time because I think, I can't go to the crash scene. I just didn't, before I even knew it was Tyler, I just couldn't bring myself to go. And when he told me that, I just screamed, oh my God, is he dead? And he said he didn't know. He said nobody knew. So I went ahead and I left the parking lot at Safeway, and I drove down Cox Neck Road, got as close as I could get. You'll see how they have the fire trucks blocking it. They didn't want anyone to see the cars or the makeshift morgue. They actually they put a tent up where they kept the bodies until they could be identified and transported to the medical examiner's office. But they had all that blocked off. So I got there, and I went up. I saw a group of first responders standing there. There's probably 20 of them. But I didn't recognize them, so I knew they weren't from Ken Island, which was odd because Ken Island was the department that responded to the crash. And I ran up to these responders. I said, I know my son was in one of those cars, and I need one of you to tell me he's still alive. And they said, who's your son, ma'am? A lot of commotion going on, pretty loud. I said, his name's Tyler Elsey. Well, even with all that commotion going on, as soon as I said his name, every one of those first responders looked away or looked down and wouldn't say a word. You could have heard a pin drop. I started screaming and I said, no. I said, I know that look. I know what that means. No, not Tyler. He can't be dead. All he wanted to do was save lives. I know he's still alive. And I was so frustrated. And there was a paramedic next to me. And I'll tell you what, I started punching her, grabbing her, shaking her, demanding she was going to tell me he was still alive. Tyler was my world. I couldn't even fathom having a life without him. And these are actual pictures that the news did. The news did a video. This is actually me when I was on that paramedic begging her to tell me he was still alive. Next thing I know, there's a sheriff's deputy and a priest standing in front of me. And he took my hand. He says, ma'am, he said, I need you to calm down. He says, I know you have a lot of questions, and I'm going to try to answer them for you. He confirmed that I was Tyler's mom. And he said, your son, there was a very serious motor vehicle collision, and your son was an occupant in that vehicle. And he said, I'm really sorry, ma'am, but he is deceased. And the second he said that, I literally fell to the ground. Literally fell right there on the road. I can't even begin to tell you what I was feeling. It was like somebody reaches in and grabs your soul and yanks it out. I was trembling so bad, my legs would not support me. I couldn't stand, I couldn't breathe. It was the most unbelievable feeling in the world. I had to call his sister, who at the time was still looking for him. And when she picked up the phone, all she said was it Tyler? And I said, yes, it was. She said, is he dead? And of course, I'm still like not in the right mind. I'm like not even thinking it's reality. And I just blurted out, he's gone, Amanda. I said, he's dead. They're all dead. All four of them. Corey, Mike, Harrison, Tyler, they were all dead, and that quick. And I heard the worst scream come from the phone, and the same thing happened. She collapsed. And a few minutes later, the phone rang, and it happened to be Liz, his girlfriend, all throughout high school. And Liz was this very tiny, petite, quiet girl. And she was crying, and she said, Mom, I keep reading these things, and people keep leaving me messages. Is it true? Is Tyler really dead? And I had to tell her, yeah, honey, he's really gone. And I told him what happened. I told him it was all of them. And I mean, I couldn't even understand her. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't talk. She was sobbing so hard. I don't remember much after that minute, to be honest. I literally was like a walking zombie. I didn't eat, didn't sleep, barely could get up off the couch to take a shower. The doctor said it was because I was suffering from severe shock and that there's no telling how long it could last. Well, it lasted a long time, let me tell you. Over the next 10 days, we had to attend 4 funerals. We decided that Tyler's girlfriend and I were going to go pick out his plot at the cemetery. But beforehand, before we went to that, she wanted to go to the crash site. They wouldn't let us see the cars when we were at the crash site or the bodies. Matter of fact, the priest said to me, he said, ma'am, he said, Tyler would not want your last memory of him to be in the condition he's in right now. That was rough to hear. So this was a couple days later, like I said, when we were going to go to the cemetery, and we stopped there first at the crash site. Liz wanted to see it, and a lot of people were there putting up flowers and, crosses. And Liz, that's Tyler's girlfriend, there was all the marks that they painted on asphalt. And I guess to mark like certain areas where the car like lost control or, where they made impact. So she follows, like she goes way down and she follows the skid marks and the paint marks. And then she finally gets closer to me, almost like directly across from where the cars crashed. She gets to the last paint mark and she just stops and she knelt down and just sobbed. She says, this is it, Mom. And I said, this is what? She said, this is where he took his last breath. And I just went over and knelt with her and hugged, and we were literally kneeling in that spot where Tyler's life ended. And I can't tell you how that felt. I can't tell you much about his funeral. Like I said, I don't have a lot of memory. Matter of fact, there's only one part of the funeral I do remember. We were at the cemetery, a graveside service, and the fire sirens went off, and they dispatched Tyler's final fire call. and thanked him for his service. And then my oldest son, who was in his formals, fire department formals, walked up to the casket, and he had tears just streaming down his face. And he saluted his baby brother and said his final goodbye to him. And that was the hardest, it's so hard to watch. You know, I couldn't comfort him. I couldn't even comfort myself, let alone try to comfort my kids. But that's the only part of the funeral I can remember. I continued acting like a zombie, unable to function in any way, shape, or form. And I finally hit rock bottom on my first Mother's Day, which was about a month later. And I reached the point where I couldn't live with this pain anymore. I can't even explain it. But there was no way I was going to be able to live with it. Well, luckily I had my mom, who was my rock. She had lost children of her own too, so she knew what I was going through. And she told me, she got me on the phone, she says, you know what, girl, you need to snap out of it. And I said, no, there is no snapping out of this. You can't not feel what I'm feeling. And she said, no, but you can do something about it. She says, all you know, what did Tyler want to do with his life? All he wanted to do was save lives, and now you're talking about taking your own life because you can't deal with it? She said, get a grip and live his legacy. Go out there and save others' lives. She said, find out what caused this crash. Go out there, talk to everyone you know, and tell them his story so that they don't make the same bad choice, whatever that might have been, and save lives for him. So on that day, I made a promise to Tyler that I wouldn't consider contemplating suicide, that I would go out and live his legacy. So the first thing I had to do was figure out, everyone kept saying, you can probably imagine the first question everyone asked, were they drinking? Was it drugs? Well, I knew my son. I know there was no way in hell he was going to get into a car with anyone drinking or on drugs. But I had to be able to say, I know for a fact from the autopsy report that there were no drugs or alcohol in any of those boys. So I went to the medical examiner's office in Baltimore, and normally they'll give you an autopsy report and send you on your way. Well, this time they didn't do that. The medical examiner himself came out and asked me to come follow him back to the office, to an office, more like a conference room. He wanted to go over the reports with me. He said he knew I was going to have a lot of questions. And he was right, which really I think he knew once I saw the autopsy report that it was going to be almost too much for me. The first thing I noticed, you can see that's Tyler and his girlfriend. Tyler was really tall. He was 6'1". At least when he was 6'1" when he got into the car. When they pulled him out, he was 5'7". So I told the medical examiner, I said, you have a typo here. I said, Tyler wasn't 5'7". And literally, the medical examiner had tears in his eyes, okay, as he's talking to me. Swear to you, he had tears in his eyes. And he said, yes, ma'am. He said he was only 5'7" because he had so many broken bones in his body, and from his legs down were completely crushed. I keep looking at this kid over here in your leg. Tyler had, one of the injuries that he had was a 10-inch gash on his left leg. And according to the autopsy report, they put it, his bones and muscles in that leg were completely macerated, which means pulverized. There was nothing. Nothing at all. And that was only some of the injuries. You can even see them all here, but to put it mildly, there was nothing that wasn't broken. He was an organ donor, of course he was, because that's a way to save lives. He had nothing to donate. She talked about the different parts of the crash and how the organs go. all of his organs, the force was so strong, it just crushed him inside and out. That's why they said he wouldn't want me to see him. Even his jaw, his jaw was broken, his gums and the bottom teeth were semi-detached. They talked about seatbelts. Oh my gosh, every time Tyler and Harrison would get into the back seat of the car, I'd say, put seatbelts on, and Tyler would always roll his eyes, Mom, we're only going down the street. And they would never put their seatbelts on. Well, guess what? They didn't. And the result, Tyler had 4 skull fractures, including one at the base of his skull, because him and Harrison in the back seat, they played ping pong ball with each other's heads. I don't think in this case a seatbelt would have saved them. It's hard to say, because as you can see, just the number of injuries he had were too devastating. I did have one thing that I could take comfort in. And the medical examiner put it this way. He said, God took your son in the most humane way possible. Because he was saying he died instantly. And I know this because of some of the injuries. His descending aorta snapped. It severed completely away from the heart because of the sudden stop of the crash. And his spinal canal, according to the autopsy report, was completely obliterated, including severing the brainstem. So without the brainstem, there's no life whatsoever. It's the only comfort I have, is that he didn't suffer. So I was thinking to myself, okay, well, and all the autopsy reports, by the way, showed none of them had any drugs or alcohol in them. So I knew there were injuries, but I still didn't know what happened or why, especially when 4 kids are in this car that are so responsible. I didn't know if maybe a deer ran out in front of them. I mean, what on earth could cause this kind of injuries to a healthy, strong young man? That I had no idea. I was totally floored. I had no idea. So I went on. The next thing I wanted to do was go look at the car. I thought, maybe if I can go look at the car, it might give me the answers I needed. Well, they pulled the car out literally on this tractor with a lift, like a little tray thing, and it was just nothing but mangled metal. That's what they brought out for me to look at and go through. I noticed as I was going through the car, there was something wedged in the seat, under the seat, in the back seat. If you can kind of, well, really, to be honest, you couldn't even tell what was front and back. But I tried to get, for some reason, I really wanted to see what it was. And I pulled and I tugged and I yanked. And when I finally got it out, I don't know if you can tell what it is. It was the Nike shoes he bought 2 days earlier. And they were filled with glass and had his blood all over the shoes. The shoes he was so excited to have. So seeing the car, I still didn't know what happened. I knew his injuries were horrific. I knew the car was nothing but a tangled mess of metal. So this is what really I needed to find out what the hell happened. I did talk to Harrison's dad, who came home right before the boys left his house at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And he told me that the boys had been shooting hoops in the driveway, and they were Corey wanted to take his car down the road to see how it would drive, because he just had it lowered and some other kind of customization done. Tyler wasn't going to go. He had on his fire shirt, his Kent Island Fire Department shirt, and he was just going to go straight to the firehouse because he had Fire 2 class that night. But Harrison begged him to come with him. He's like, it's only going to be a few minutes. We're just going down the street and back, and we haven't seen each other in so long because of work and everything. He's, please come with me. Tyler, being Tyler, gave in. and he climbed into the back seat with Harrison. This was at 4 o'clock. And by 4:03, the 911 call went out at 4:03, 3 minutes. They only drove a half a mile. But according to the accident investigation report, the top speed they reached was 97 miles per hour on this 2-lane country road where the speed limit is 40. Corey came to a slight bend in the road, and he began to lose control of the car. And it slid sideways, first like this way to where the driver's side was going that way. So he tried to correct, overcorrected, and when he did, and there was like gravel along the side of the road. It acted almost like a pinball machine and shot the car over the center line, where it just so happened there was another car heading that way. When they made impact, they were doing 76 miles per hour. So it only took a half a mile and 3 minutes for my son to make that one choice to go with them, and they were all four gone that quick. So whenever your mom says put on a seatbelt or something, just do me a favor. Don't tell her, I'm just going down the road. Just keep remembering Tyler and that half a mile. Because see, that's all it was that killed them. It wasn't a deer, all it was stupidity. They were boys being boys and decided, we don't know why they were going so fast. We were thinking that since he just had his car customized, maybe he wanted to see how quick he could get it to 100. We don't know. We'll never know. Because none of them lived to tell us why. But what we do know is that it's due to the speed that made his injuries, all of the injuries, so bad. Believe it or not, his injuries weren't the worst. They were the second worst. So you can just imagine how bad the worst was. We talked a little bit about crash force, just to give you an idea of what hit him. They said, the sheriff told me, you take the speed of the two cars, add them together, and then multiply that by the weight of the victim. So when we did that, we calculated basically Tyler had 20,000 pounds of crash force hit his body. The medical examiner even told me his chest had the same injuries of a soldier who gets killed in a close-range explosion. All because Corey wanted to drive 97 miles per hour. And I know Tyler. Did he say anything? Did he tell them it was dangerous to slow down? He might have one time, but Tyler didn't like confrontation or making people upset, so he probably didn't, or probably just let it go after once. But I don't think there was much time anyway. Going that fast, we're talking a matter of seconds. So now that I knew what had happened, and we're getting towards the end of this presentation, but I want to go on and explain quickly what happens to the families. You know, I told you, we're the ones really that suffer the most. Well, luckily, thanks to following my mom's advice, I'm okay today. Don't get me wrong, I still grieve. This week is a hell of a week for me, and there's no morning I don't wake up crying. But really, it's my kids that still suffer. We don't celebrate Christmas anymore. We tried for the first 2 years, but that was Tyler's favorite holiday. He gets so giddy at Christmas time, and he was so in the Christmas spirit, always. On Christmas Eve, we'd always have this big Christmas Eve dinner, and they'd get to open up one gift. And it wasn't even the gifts that he was excited about, it was just getting the whole family together. He loved having all of his family there together at the same time. But it was so hard. The first 2 years we tried, all we did was cry. So now you don't want to know what we do on Christmas Eve? We go to the cemetery, And we put the star on top of Tyler's tree in front of his grave and light it as a family, so he can still be part of our celebration. That's how we celebrate Christmas. And my mom, who was my rock, she tried to be strong enough for both of us, but the grief overtook her. She died 1 year and 1 week after Tyler. Grief won out. And my daughter is extremely sensitive, was extremely close to Ty. She definitely couldn't handle it. At the time of the crash, she was a manager for a tech company, had a husband, 2 kids, decent car, nice house. Within 2 years of the accident, she started taking drugs to mask the pain. She had so much guilt. She kept saying, why was it him and not me? You can see right there from her Facebook post right before he graduated how proud she was of him. Well, needless to say, the pills that she was taking ended up being a heroin addiction. And for 2 years, I would wake up, the first thing I did, these are recent years, the first thing I would have to do is go check her and make sure she was still alive, because she shot up heroin so much. Thank God, I don't know, I swear it has to be Tyler intervening. Something sparked in her and she was able to recover. Now she's 2 years clean, but not before she lost literally everything she had in her life. Her job, her husband, her kids, her car, her house, and even her freedom, where she spent 10 months in prison, all because she couldn't deal with losing her brother. So you guys can think about that, all of you that have siblings, what it would do to them. And we're now at the point where we have all these weddings, all his friends are getting married. But every wedding and every celebration, we always have an empty chair in honor of Tyler. And I really hope that your parents don't ever have to put out an empty chair, because it just makes the holiday not worth celebrating. It's almost time to completely wrap up, but I want you to think about something for me. I want you to think about where you want to be 1 year from now. If you were like Tyler, you probably have all kinds of goals, hopes, dreams. Well, he had a plan. He wanted to be in Anne Arundel County Fire Department, working search and rescue 1 year after the crash. This picture was taken April 20th, 2012, when the boys were shopping for prom formals. That picture was taken to the day 1 year later. He wasn't fighting fires and saving lives. He was laying in a casket and we were putting him to rest, laying him to rest. Don't let that happen to you. Speak up, say something. When you're with somebody who's driving unsafe, wear the seatbelts in the back seat. It's no big deal. And drive the damn speed limit. They're there for a reason. Even if it is only half a mile. You see what a half an hour can do at 97 miles per hour. Last thing I want to do is just play a quick, I always end my presentations with a quick video tribute to Tyler. So if you don't mind, I'm going to put that on real quick and then we will wrap up.
The fire quickly spread by daybreak, and by the time it was brought under control, close to 50 acres had burned. Volunteer firefighters we spoke with said it was exhausting.
It was hot. I mean, it was coming out quick, and then we had it contained mostly 90% of the way.
I came
they had the
by
helicopters come down
today
and
to
drop
see
what they call water bombs. It's like 300 gallons of water that they drop down.
Oh, I had to let you know. If I knew the last time that I held you was the last time I'd have held you and never let go. I got you. Oh, it's kept me awake nights wondering was your time. I guess heaven was needing a hero, somebody just like you, brave enough to stand up for what you believe and follow it through. When I try to
A tight-knit community is left grieving tonight after a horrific crash leaves 4 teenagers, 4 friends
the
dead.
only conclusion I come to is that heaven was needing a hero like you.
This was Tyler's locker. 350 some hours worth of training in a year and a half. That's as a volunteer.
I remember the last time I saw you. Oh, you held your head up proud. I laughed inside when I saw how you were standing.
And skid sideways into the path of the car in front of them. It was a horrible collision.
Clearly both of them were non-responsive in the front seat. And then I turned around and looked at the back seat and just saw a tangled mess of 2 other kids.
That part will just be void. No matter how much I need you now, heaven needed you more. 'Cause heaven was needing a hero, somebody just like you, brave enough to stand up for what you believe and follow.
Mike Trick sobbed by the side of the road and then put up a cross for his brother, Tyler Elsey. R.I.P., buddy, it says.
Vigil began with a tribute to Elsey, an active member of the very volunteer fire department that responded to the crash. His gear was put out, and at one point, his mother approached and caressed his uniform.
Tyler was a good person. He gave and gave and gave, and he never, ever complained.
That's you.
He's a great young man. God has a great young man with him right now, and I know he's looking over everybody.